Welcome. I'm Bob Burke, the organizer of the Libertarian Party Caucus, and in this video I want to address Social Security. While it is important to state up front that Libertarians would have completely opposed the Social Security program, for a number of reasons that in a moment that will become transparent, we also understand that obligations have been made and people have planned accordingly. To that end, Libertarians believe the American people need to take a serious look at what has happened to our Social Security savings before you can understand how desperate the situation really is. Only then can we start looking at real solutions. This is a picture of the Social Security Trust Fund. It is a very small filing cabinet with what our government calls special issue Social Security treasuries, which are found in the binder displayed. When the government normally borrows to cover expenses, they issue treasury bonds that are then bought in the open market by private investors and governments around the world. Pretty standard stuff. This is not so with our Social Security treasury bonds. These special issue bonds are bought by the federal government themselves, who then moves the money into the general budget and spends it on things like war and solar companies. My friends, think about this for a moment. If we could loan money to ourselves, we would all be rich. But we can't, at least not for long. With a roughly $1.5 trillion budget hole in Washington, D.C., our politicians will have to borrow this money back from private investors and foreign governments. That's what they'll do to repay these special issue bonds. In other words, the red and blue team stole your Social Security retirement and they spent it. It's gone. You should be furious. Worse yet, they are passing the cost on to our children and grandchildren. Libertarians understand a concept called a moral hazard very well. A moral hazard is like someone parking a wagon full of cupcakes in a kindergarten room and walking away. We all know that the temptation is greater than the will to do the right thing. We believe in a government that identifies and avoids these moral hazards. And Social Security was a doozy of a moral hazard, and the cupcakes are gone. We can save Social Security benefits and meet the obligations made, but serious cuts in other parts of government are going to have to be made. The age of eligibility will have to be moved out, and the program needs to begin a phase-out, and personal savings encouraged. These are the solutions brought out by Dr. Ron Paul and the Libertarian presidential candidate Gary Johnson during the 2012 election. Now, if you're convinced that Social Security is fine and that our politicians have a handle on things, then the Libertarian Party is not for you. However, you should know that Bernie Madoff, a man imprisoned for a $50 billion Ponzi scheme, calls Social Security the greatest Ponzi scheme ever devised, and I think he should know. Again, if I were you, I'd be angry. If you don't believe me, call your congressman, call your senator and ask them the hard questions that I just posed. Did the government loan the money to itself? Can the government repay the bonds without borrowing money? And most importantly, why have they avoided telling you the truth? We are not going to fix Social Security from Western Wisconsin. I have no illusions about that. But by showing up to the Libertarian Caucus, you will say to all the politicians in the state, enough of the lies, enough of the theft of our Social Security funds. I look forward to some very displeased seniors February 23rd for the caucus. And if you come, I will tell you how politicians have systematically cheated you out of benefit increases since 1995. We are Liberty Valley, Wisconsin.